Hello, my name is Carl Peterson. I work with the Employment Security Department. I'm here with Craig from CDS. We're here to talk to you about kind of the trucking industry, working as a CDL driver, and what that is about. This is the first podcast for the Living Wage Wednesday. Living Wage Wednesday is a concept where we're going to be presenting you different kind of living wage career opportunities. We're going to be working with training providers, employers with Pierce County, and looking at different kinds of obvious yet unobvious professions that you've thought of or never thought of to get into the careers that you want. All right. Well, without further ado, we're going to just kind of first talk. Craig, thank you for meeting with me today and talking to me about about being a CDL driver. I remember you telling me before we started that you've been in CDL driving for 30 years. Tell me how you got into it.
Well, I was a police officer 30 years ago in the bustling town of Colville, Washington, which is in the northeast corner of our state. It's actually a beautiful community, but a police officer made, back in those days, $1,200 a month, full-time. So that wasn't quite enough to make ends meet. And a guy that worked at the lumber, Ace Hardware Lumber, said, you know, if you drive a delivery truck for us, I'll pay you. Back then, I think the wage was something like $9 an hour, which was not bad for the time, or something $10 an hour. Yeah, if you get your license, you can go to work for me. Back then, this was what was entailing in getting my license. I met a guy behind a dumpster. I'm not exaggerating. I signed a piece of paper, and I was magically a truck driver. And then I went about for a 2-week period trying to kill myself, learning how to drive it. I went everywhere I went at 13 miles an hour until I could figure out how to shift into high range and all the different things you have to learn as a truck driver. So that was the school of hard knocks days, 30 years ago. But I did it really just to round out my income. And now, 2 years later, I had decided this law enforcement thing isn't for me. I moved to the other side of the mountains. I was moved over here to the Olympia area, and I went on 5 ride-alongs with the Seattle Police Department. And at the end of those 5 ride-alongs, I realized I don't think I want to be a cop here. So I went back to driving a truck, and I have never looked back since. It's how I've earned my life.
Nice. And so can you tell me about kind of the variety of your what have you driven? Have you driven throughout the country, or have you just been a local driver? Touch on that, please.
Yeah. So when I first took a driving job on this side of the mountains, I went over the road. I did that for 9 months with a company called Schneider National. They're a large nationally placed company you probably all heard of, kind of like a Swift or a Werner. What I realized after 9 months is that I'd rather shoot myself than drive over the road anymore. So I put my name out there for local work and started working locally after that 9 months all the way to this date. I've never been over the road a second. The good news about our current economy is over the road is an option, not a requirement anymore. So you can, with proper training, go right into local work. The reason you want to consider that, if you're going to consider driving, is not only being at home, which is a benefit, it's that the money is so much better in the local environment. So I have had a storied background. I've done construction, delivery work, and dump truck work. In my training environment, I've been in everything you can almost imagine in a training environment. I've been in a part of the CDS family now for going on 11 years. I'm the vice president now, but I started as a part-time instructor. There's really not much I haven't driven. I like it. There's a little bit of diesel in my blood now. I think it's a good way to make a living.
Definitely. So can you tell me about kind of the most unique load you have ever taken, if that you're able to disclose that?
Well, the load wasn't maybe all that unique, except it was extraordinarily light. I had an entire tractor trailer full, this was in the Schneider days, full of egg crates. I mean, from floor to ceiling, not even on pallets, just 53 feet of trailer, 8 feet wide, floor to ceiling, egg crates. And all I had was an address. It was out in the middle of nowhere in California. And then I start driving by, and it's just all this tall barbed wire fence and a guarded gate and a prison. And I pull into this prison after they check out my truck to make sure I didn't have any contraband or weapons. I pull into the largest prison-ran egg farm I've ever seen in my life. They had me back up to a loading dock door. I opened the back, and I'm thinking this is going to be all day getting this unloaded. I was unloaded by about 70 different people working from the prison in that system in about 10 minutes.
Wow.
It was such a unique experience. Being a police officer, I put people in places like that. I never willingly driven into one and said I'm going to do this. But that's probably one of the most unique experiences. So there are some plenty, some that I wouldn't share probably in this environment, but it is this job has treated me really well. It's a great way to be.
Let's talk more about how many hours a week you used to spend working as a CDL driver. Did you work 40? Was it 60, sometimes 80? What was the normal schedule for you?
So in long haul, and this is why long haul is they've kind of tricked people into working for them. They pay you by the mile. So you're going to drive all day long, be paid by the mile. I mean, you're never going to get any overtime for anything over 8 hours, right? Or anything over 40. So local work pays you by the hour. The starting wages range anywhere from $22.50 an hour all the way to $28.46 an hour. Old Dominion pays $28.46 an hour to start. There's about 5 hours of overtime built in to the schedule for every driver at Old Dominion. So it's a average 45-hour schedule, right? But that means $70,000 a year. So you're being compensated for that time in local, where all the hours you put in over the road you're just going to get one set fee. The average right now for an over-the-road driver is $40,350 versus $70,000 at Old Dominion, or $55,000 to $65,000 almost everywhere else in the environment.
Yeah.
So you can expect long hours in a given week, but understand that there are federal rules and state rules that preclude you from just being worked until you drop. You can only work a 14-hour day at the most with a commercial license. You can only drive 10 of those hours. So if your local is about driving and delivery, so it's really not as much about running out of driving time. It's about just running out of time on the clock. But after 14 hours, you have to go home. There is no choice in it. So it's a kind of a relief valve from being maybe put into a bad position where you're forced to do overtime you didn't want to do. They just legally can't do it. And you can't work any more than 70 hours in a given time period. So there's double protections in this. So that the way to think about this now is logistics and large logistics companies in the Washington area are managing your overtime so you can keep drivers going throughout the week. Mm-hmm. So, but to be clear, you could face a 50-hour work week. That can happen when they get really busy. But I think most of us can tolerate that if you're being compensated.
Absolutely. I recently had overtime myself, and I loved it because I was able to do a bunch of things, with the money I got, and I didn't have to go outside during the COVID experience, so it actually worked out really well. So, overtime definitely has its benefits. So, awesome. And I like to kind of know more about your opinion, about the kind of the industry in general. Are you guys looking for, when you're in the CDL industry, what are the kind of traits that people are looking for? And then more interestingly, what are they not looking for?
Sure. So let's talk. One of the basic underlying things that has to be clear, and you're thinking about this, is you can't have a really bad driving record. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have something on your driving record. I myself got a little too excited on my Harley Davidson a couple of years ago, and I picked up a ticket on my Harley, and I can go to work anywhere in the state of Washington with a phone call tomorrow because I've been driving. But if you have 3 of those tickets in a year, you're going to have to wait for something to drop off down to 2 tickets before you can get hired. The standards in this industry are you have to be on time. This is not an industry that says it was okay that you were 5 minutes late to pick up your truck. So be attentive, be arrested, because the next most important thing in this industry is safety. You are driving a vehicle that doesn't even feel it if you hit a smart car. It would just disappear into shiny little parts. So we have to look out for all of the other motorists on the road that don't understand the profession of driving one of these trucks. So timeliness and safety are top priorities. Other than that, you drive like you're going to church on Sunday every day you drive, because your driving record matters now to your employment. But I've made it for 30 years, other than my little Harley experience. I've had 1 ticket in maybe 25 years, and that was on the Harley Davidson. So not a lot that way. If you're going to be working locally, it can be 0 physical effort. There's a company called Custom Cold. They deliver fish. You just pull up to the dock with the doors open, and they unload you because it's all bigger than you are. Then there's companies like Old Dominion, Right Away, Oak Harbor. They're in the LTL business, less than a load business. You've probably seen their trucks. Everything's on a pallet. So things come off with a pallet or a forklift. So this is easier on you as a driver because equipment's helping you in some. And then there's companies like Cisco Foods. They pay $84,000 a year for their established drivers, which is a great salary, and they're local and home every night. But you're up and down a ramp all day long with a hand truck stacked with food, going in and out of restaurants, stores, whatever, and putting it away. So it's a much more physical job in that way. Moving, really good money in moving. but it's physical. You're picking stuff up and moving it. So really the best way I could put this is there's probably a style of work that's going to match up with almost anybody's needs and requirements. I mean, we've had people that have prosthetic legs come through a program, successfully complete, and they're working in the industry. And this guy's a dump truck driver. So he hops in and out of the truck probably faster than I would, and I have both my own. But everything he does to deliver is pulling a lever that dumps the load out when he gets to his delivery point. So there's very little physical output from the work he's doing with the truck itself, right? Hydraulics.
Awesome. Yeah, that helps a lot. And that's good to know. So it's a right on time industry, believes in, that's good to know. It's definitely good to know. Anything else that you would dissuade somebody from doing, or kind of a trait that you would dissuade people from having?
Well, you need to have, if you're going to work locally, customer service. Let's pick on a good company. Pepsi Cola. That's a great company to work for, right? Coca-Cola. But let's pick on Pepsi because they start at a higher wage. Pepsi Cola hires at $26 an hour up. It's like $26. But you are the last person that account sees. And sometimes the only person they ever meet is the driver on the delivery. So you have to have actual, real bedside manner and customer service skills. So in fact, when you're going for a Pepsi job, you must build your resume to the customer service side. And all of us have had customer service. In some ways, I'm doing customer service right now. I'm helping out in this case. It's a service. You can add that to your resume. Now, if you go to work for PG&E, P&G, they deliver wood chips in a big truck. They talk to one person a day. So customer service is not even going to be mentioned in your resume. It's not a part or needed to be in there because you're just going to be loaded and unloaded all day long. So you kind of got to know what you want. We can help anybody with job placement if we know what they want. It's if they don't know what they want to do that there's so much opportunity out there, it's hard to zero in on.
Yeah, that's when I was working as a case manager for reemployment. That was always the hardest individuals to work with, is people who didn't know what they wanted. Who said, "Oh, I want anything," and then you say, "Here's anything," and they were like, "No, that's not what I want." Exactly. So yeah, no, definitely. Awesome. And then let's kind of go into what you do right now. What do you do right now?
Well, I'm a campus director at Commercial Driver School and the vice president of the company. So basically that means I do events like this when asked to. It also means that I take out the trash. My job is everything. I'm also breaking my own advice. I'm paid by the mile, right? I'm salaried. So as a salaried guy, if I have a 60-hour week, I have a 60-hour week. If I have a 40-hour week, I'm feeling I want to thank the gods. So all that being said, it's only a job if you don't love it. I actually love what I do. So these are things I do willingly. What I mean is, when I was just driving trucks, at the end of the day, it's a great benefit. At the end of the day, when you're driving a truck, your day's over. Freight doesn't care what happened to you. At the end of the day, when I go home, the phone will ring and there'll be a problem. Again, I like my job, so I'm down with that. But an advantage to driving a truck for a company like Pepsi is Pepsi doesn't care. You put it away, your job is done, and you can go home and rest.
That sounds really great.
The most important thing we do in the company, in my opinion, is what I'm doing right now. Outreach about the industry. We have a nonprofit. Its whole purpose in being is to do outreach for the transportation industry. So just to give you some idea of the demand in our area, we're the 4th largest transportation hub in the United States. People don't know that about our region. We have the 2nd and 3rd largest container ports on the West Coast. LA's number 1 by a bunch, but Tacoma's number 2, Seattle's number 3. So that brings in a lot of freight from all over the world that has to come here and be distributed. It creates a lot of demand for our transportation industry. The driver demand creates deficits in other parts of the industry. Let me give you an example. Cisco Foods, they're always in need of more drivers. In fact, they have lost profit share because they don't have enough drivers, and they pay $84,000 a year. They don't have enough drivers. So they take people out of their warehouse, out of their offices, train them up at our school, in fact, out of Auburn. They train them up to be a commercial driver, but that leaves a vacuum, a void, right? They're kind of cannibalizing their own company. And they have to backfill those jobs. So this creates a demand in a field that a lot of people aren't looking at. Let me give you an example. IT security specialist. We got one of these guys a job at Les Schwab Tire because nobody thinks about Les Schwab Tire and IT security. They think of Les Schwab Tire and tires, and they're really efficient guy that runs out in a white shirt, says, how can I help you? So transportation is a really good hot topic in our market. And there has been effects with COVID, absolutely. Some things have been flatlined, but not reduced, which is a good sign. And then other segments have blown up. Fuel delivery companies are blown up because people are staying at home and burning fuel oils and propane and that kind of. Grocery has blown up. Safeway Corporation has never had to advertise for drivers. If you walk into a Safeway, you'll listen to this now that I've said it probably. Walk into a Safeway and listen to the recorded voice in the background saying, hey, we're looking for more employees to be checkers. We're looking for more employees to be drivers. They have never had to ask for a driver because it's a really good place to work. So there you go.
Fascinating. And that's really, really interesting. And then if somebody were to want to become a part of CDS, what would they need to do to get into your training program?
Well, the training program, there's a lot of ways to get into the training program. I mean, people sometimes just fund their own training, but also we're a state-approved program and we're a VA-approved program. If you're in the military and you want to become a commercial driver, you just use your GI Bill, go to school, complete your license. It takes 4 weeks, by the way, to get a Class A commercial license. So, and let me just illustrate something. So I talked about Old Dominion earlier. Old Dominion starts at $28.46 an hour. That's $70,000 a year. They hire directly out of our school. $70,000 a year for a $5,000 certificate. I mean, the payoff for that, and this is also what WorkSources and career teams and what these people realize also, which is it's sort of obvious on the face. It's a good return for that investment for their client because there's a lot of training. Well, and not to pick on teachers, but if you've got a master's degree, which is nothing wrong with education, I'm not saying that. If you've got a master's degree in education, you are making a teacher salary, let's say, from $35,000 to $55,000 a year on average. And you may have a $200,000 student debt. So, and again, please do not read me the wrong way. I think we have to have great educators. People like me, dumb as a rock, need to drive trucks, but we have to have educators. I'm just saying, if you contrast these two output, and now again, back to Old Dominion, after 1.5 years of working at Old Dominion, you're topped out in your salary. That's an $85,000 a year local home every night job. That's why people don't leave that company, right? Mm-hmm. This is truly family wage. In our area where we're talking, if people make $70,000 to $72,000 a year, they feel like they've made it. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the entry-level wage at Old Dominion, which I keep picking on them, but we've worked with that company for a lot of years. So I invite you to at least look at the industry. And I'm going to throw a stat out that I may not think to ask, but it's been on my mind because I just had a big briefing with a lot of female soldiers getting ready to come out of the military. Only 7% of women are represented in transportation. 7%. We're now short 300,000 drivers in the United States. Half of our country, roughly, they say it's 49% women, 51%. That's how it breaks. But only 7% of, let's say, 50% of the country wants to drive in a position that does not care about your gender. It can't care. The freight just needs to get delivered. So if I'm making $85,000 a year after a year and a half at Old Dominion, so is every female driver next to me. There's not this 85 cents in the dollar thing you hear about in the United States happening in transportation. And yet, women think often, I don't want to pigeonhole everybody into one category. They often think this means you have to go over the road or be away from your. I don't want to be away from my family either. I'm with you. I'm talking about local work where you're grounded at home. There's companies like a small company you've probably never heard of, U-Haul. If you've ever moved, maybe from home. U-Haul only wants to hire women drivers for their pod delivery. Now the pod is that package box thing you can put your belongings in, lock up, they'll pick it up with a forklift, put on the truck and haul it off, and it gets delivered to Tucson or wherever you're moving to. They want women in that role exclusively. They can't say that legally. I can just tell you this because we do their training. They do this because women are not an affront when they come to the front door for the housewife that's waiting at home for that delivery. They're not off-putting to the housewife or if the husband's sitting at home. Women have a much lower accident rate than men do after they're trained. Men, close your ears, you won't want to hear this. So that's stats. We're not making it up. Women are safer drivers commercially and in a car, by the way. But commercially, they're safer than any man is.
I could believe that.
So they're sought after the industry. And they're only represented at 7%. So companies like Coke and Pepsi, the driver fleet doesn't look like the rest of America. My offices at CDS are more women than men. That's the normal makeup of an office. There they have only 7% represented. So, ladies out there, I'm telling you, my wife's a commercial driver. She's 5'2". It's not about being a big burly anything. It's about what's going on up here. That's what makes you a good driver.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's that's such a really good message, and it's really, yeah, that's a really it's a family wage too. I mean, and it's to find those family wage professions, there just are not as many of them as there used to be, and so this is the perfect job if you're trying to support a family or try and support a dream or both. It's the perfect kind of position.
Well, and another way to maybe say this is as a commercial driver. Now, I didn't know I'd end up in a truck school, frankly, but here I am, nonetheless, in this industry. But in the 30 years I've been a commercial driver, I've never not had a job. It's always paid the bills nicely or well, right? It's always been good to excellent in pay. It's a great profession and one that's easily looked over. And it can lead to other things like I'm doing right now. A lot of warehouse managers are commercial drivers first. Now, let me tell you something about that, though. The warehouse manager at Coca-Cola makes $65,000 a year. The drivers make $65,000 a year starting at Coca. So if you like being a boss, great, go for it. But if you like just making a good wage and not having those work, driving can be a really good source.
Great. That's great. Is there any other kinds of things you kind of want to touch on, when we're talking about this profession, your school, or anything else that you'd like to touch on?
Well, sure. So, we're in this business of getting people in transportation in the driver's seat. And one of the most important things to us is if we can help you find a job where you don't want to drive, we're happy to do that. When you call any of our campuses, just say, I'm here for job placement assistance, and we'll talk to you about what you want to do, even give you some resume ideas for that company. But if you want to drive, really what you need to do is have the desire to maybe have a family wage job or a change in your life or something that isn't going to be affected by COVID or the outside world. Because one of the things I said earlier that maybe didn't resonate, we haven't had a reduction in drivers because of COVID. We've actually had static where the demand hasn't increased in some segments. And then we've had segments that have blown up for drivers. Walmart, terrible place perhaps to work as a regular employee there. I've heard some pretty bad stories. I'm not trying to offend anybody that works at Walmart, but I've heard some stories about people that work there that they weren't too happy with it, reduced hours, whatever. Drivers at Walmart make $100,000 a year on average. They work regionally. They're not home every night, but they're home every week. And they're now putting advertisements out for we need drivers, which is absolutely unheard of in this industry. So that tells you what kind of dynamics we're having right now. So COVID isn't a detractor. It's just changing the demand in certain different areas. The idea is you do 8 hours a day of training, Monday through Friday for 4 weeks. You pass the test with the state, and you're now a commercial driver. What our company is the best at, and that sounds like a broad claim, but I mean it. What we're best at is training people to be prepared for the local market. And what I mean is, if you're driving over the road, your ideal job is you drive from Seattle to Florida. That would be the perfect load because you're going to get as many miles in as you can get all the way across the country. And you maybe stop in back into one place to deliver. A local company, Old Dominion, we talked about it before, it's not a difficult thing to unload, but you're going to make 18 stops. So to be an effective local driver, you must back efficiently. So our training is emphasized on local skills, how to get that job, impress somebody on your check ride. Because to be a driver, you have to get through the resume portion, you got to get through your interview, and then there's something called a check ride, where you actually physically get in a truck with a lead driver from that company, and they check out your skills to make sure you're adequate to the position. We want you to be more than adequate. That's our whole goal, is to not just be a truck school. There's a lot of them, 62 of them in Washington. We want to be the best truck school for local work, because that's where the money is.
Good to know. That's really, really good to know. And that there's not been a change in the market because of COVID. And
yeah, just shifting really.
And do you think the market's going to go up, after we get the vaccine and stuff?
There is absolutely no question. So companies like Old Dominion that are kind of flat right now, they usually are hiring maybe 5 to 10 drivers in a given year through the busy season. Now we're about to hit Chinese New Year, which has a strange effect on us in the Northwest. Everybody stops working for 2 weeks. Parties like it's 1999, and no freight gets pushed out of Asia for 2 weeks. So we have a little bit of a hangover. It takes about 6 weeks for our freight stream to get picked back up again after Chinese New Year. So that just happens every year. So people in LTL are working 40 hours a week instead of 50, right? You're still working, it's just you're not as busy. The effects of this COVID are going to be diminished with the vaccine, meaning companies like Old Dominion, Redaway, Oak Harbor, Saia. There's a million you've probably seen driving around, working locally. they're going to go back to business again because they're servicing the Monday through Friday businesses that are now closed. So they're not ordering as much stuff. They still have many that are working, right? But much of that has been diminished. So they're flatlined. They haven't laid any drivers off. They just haven't added any. That's going to go to the add category. And the reason that matters to you is, again, these LTL positions are really good paying positions because they charge for LTL service and they can pass on those extra earnings to the driver, make it attractive. So yeah, the good news is once we start getting vaccinated, it's going to take a minute, but it's all going to get better. Construction had a slight 6-week slowdown, and then they lit up again. So even construction was barely affected. We were shut down for 6 weeks until they decided we were truly an essential service because people need drivers. So to us, we thought we were essential all along. The state finally realized, no, you guys got it. So we do.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. Well, I thank you for taking your time to speak with me today. And I hope everyone at home found some really interesting information and insight about the CDL industry. And any other piece, Craig?
Hey, just if you have any interest, you give CDS a call or you talk to Peter. I mean, take a hard look at this industry. I think you'll find it's a lot more attractive than you may have thought before.
Perfect. All right. Well, as always, thank you to CDS. You guys are a great partner. And I look forward to speaking with you next Wednesday. Thank you, everyone. Bye.